Welcome to another conversation in People in Fundraising. This podcast features interviews with nonprofit professionals who discuss their career journeys, lessons learned, and enthusiasm for working in fundraising. And here is your host, the founder of People in Fundraising, Tim Wilson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another conversation in the People in Fundraising nonprofit weekly podcast series. Today, I'm excited to welcome our guest, Laurel Teel, who is our first guest from Alabama on the podcast. Good afternoon, Laurel. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. It's a very steamy, hot day down here in Alabama, so I'm lucky to be inside and not be outside sweating.
Very good. Yes, I remember the humidity and heat of the Northeast in Massachusetts. So I think
Mhm.
Alabama probably takes it to another level, but
It does. It's I say that walking outside is like stepping into like the sweatiest gym sock that you probably own, and it's disgusting. So.
Are you a native of Alabama?
Yes, I have lived here my whole life, aside from 2 years, 2.5 years or so, that I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina, following graduating from college. So,
Okay.
yes, I'm Alabama born and bred, K through 12 in the same school system,
Oh,
and now back here, living my life.
awesome. What would you like our audience, Laurel, to know about how long you've worked in nonprofits, the institutions you've worked at, the roles you've held, and then we'll get into that first question and go from there, please.
Yeah. So I'm 38 years old. And so I have been in the nonprofit field since 2013.
Okay.
And so a good while now.
Okay.
I didn't think that, I was going to be in nonprofits. It just kind of happened that way. My skill set fits the role of a fundraiser very well. And just my natural abilities to talk to people and build relationships. I have been most of my career has been in small nonprofit organizations with a staff size of 10 or less.
Oh,
And most of the ones that I've worked at have been children's advocacy centers. So I've worked at two children's advocacy centers. And for those of you who don't know what those are, we provide critical services to child abuse victims
mm,
in our area. And the way that we do that is providing a forensic interview for the child so they don't have to go down to the police station. We have
oh,
people who are trained professionals to talk to kids about these types of things. So it's less traumatic for them because they're not having to talk to the police officer and then to a social worker and tell their story over and over. We
oh,
record it on a DVD, and that's used for the prosecution and for the rest of the investigation. In addition to that, we provide follow-up counseling that's usually free of cost for any child who's been interviewed at the center. And then we help the family with other support services and help them through the court process. So that has been the majority of my career, is assisting those families that are experiencing any type of abuse, domestic violence. Maybe there's a death in the family due to, homicide, things like that. So it's pretty hard work. It's
yeah.
pretty traumatic. And you have to take pretty good care of yourself to be in that field. I also did a brief stint with our area United Way, just working in the resource development area, which is the fundraising, the campaign, as everyone knows, if you're familiar with United Way. And then I also worked at a nonprofit that served unhoused women and children. And so most of my career has been focused on kids and mothers.
Yes. And Laurel, is that career path you're influenced by maybe what you studied at in college, or how have you sort of gravitated to
Yeah, so I was thinking about this because it kind of intertwines with one of the other questions that you sent me.
Yeah.
But my degree was in human development and family studies.
Okay.
Early on in college, I went to Auburn, War Eagle, by the way. I'm not a Roll Tide. You know, in Alabama, you have to pick, are you Roll Tide or War Eagle? I'm War Eagle, went to
Nice.
Auburn. My dad probably still wants to disown me because of that. But nevertheless, I went to Auburn. I wanted to be a pharmacist and
Okay.
quickly realized that not being able to pass chemistry at a college level was crucial to that degree, and that wasn't going to work out. And so I just took a bunch of different classes, just trying to figure out, hey, like what do I want to do? What could I see myself doing? And so I ended up in human development and family studies because I think that humans are just so interesting.
Yes.
Whether it's through relationships, it's human development across a lifespan, you know, kind of the choices that we make. I loved my class interpersonal skills because not everyone has great interpersonal skills.
True.
And it was just so interesting to me, like how we're all different, but
Yeah.
we're all people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had a choice within human development and family studies. I could do, you know, early childhood, I could do adolescence, or I could do seniors.
Okay.
And the thought of, I don't know why this image would flash into my brain of, I don't want to change an old person's diaper like ever. And I do realize that my parents are going to get old one day and, you know, I might have to assist with something like that. But the thought of spending my career, you know, with old people and they kind of smell funny and, you know, they're kind of mean, like, especially when they get, you know, they're old and crotchety. And I was just like,
Sure.
I just don't
Yeah.
think I could do that. Old people are not for me.
Yes.
And old people are for some people. They're just
Yeah.
not for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was like, well, you know, babies, they're cool too. I like that. Okay. But I was like adolescents. They're
Nice.
moody. You never know what they're going to say. Their bodies are changing. You know, they're exploring their independence.
Yeah.
And so I was just drawn to the adolescents.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think, yes, has played a role in my career about, you know, looking at organizations that I may want to work for. And I think like there are a lot of great organizations like museums, nature conservancies,
Yeah.
you know, music, performing arts. I love all of that. And I appreciate that about our world and about the people who are talented and do that kind of work. But I saw myself as a person who wanted to connect with other humans,
Yeah.
find common ground, and help them in the best way that I could, if that
Sure.
makes sense.
That does make sense. Yeah. Thank you. And I've got, a couple follow-ups. You mentioned, Laurel, earlier that,
Mhm.
working, um, with child advocacy and helping children get out of really difficult abuse situations can be really draining on the people that
Mhm.
help. So, how have you learned to, in a sense, like step back when you can so that you can prioritize your own mental well-being and emotional well-being? And then, what maybe are some of those strategies? Is it meditation? Is it, going out for walks? I mean, I'm just very curious, what do you do when you do encounter those really difficult moments?
Yeah, I would say we go to conferences all the time. We
Mhm.
hear about, hey, you need to have a self care plan.
Yeah.
You need to do this. You need to do that. And, you know, to each his own. Like, I think self care looks a lot different for me than it may look for a coworker.
Yeah.
You know, because we are all different. But I'm kind of over the going to conferences and hearing about self care and how, you know, we need to meditate and we need to do all of these things. And
Yeah.
it may work for some people.
Hmm.
But when you every day are seeing children who have experienced some of the worst things that the world has to offer them in their children,
Yeah.
you know, what they're precious, you know?
Yeah.
And so I just don't think that a meditation is going to do it for me.
Sure.
It may help in a moment, some deep breathing when I'm anxious or things like that.
Yeah.
But this is where I'm going to be very candid with you. I resigned from my job in February. I
Mm.
was the director of the Child Advocacy Center in a county in Alabama.
Oh.
I worked in that field for 9 years, and I thought I was doing a really good job of taking care of myself.
Mm.
I thought that I had it all down pat, that I was compartmentalizing everything,
Mm.
that I was going home, I was having fun with my friends on the weekend. It was all good and fine and well until it wasn't.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that well, there's one thing that I don't understand about like our field, the Child Advocacy Center. At least the people that I know that work in child advocacy centers, we're not really good at getting our own therapists.
Right. Yeah.
We're there and we're helping these kids and taking their burdens and they're transferring onto us through countertransference
Yeah.
and that vicarious trauma that we're hearing, but we're not processing with someone
Right.
else.
Yeah.
And so I will say back in August of last year, we had a really terrible case that involved a murder.
Mm.
And I think that was my breaking point
Yeah.
of just realizing that, hey, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
And so what I've done is I got a therapist then.
Good for
So
you.
starting last fall, I've been going to weekly therapy sessions that has literally changed my life. So I recommend therapy
Totally.
if
Yeah.
for everyone. We all need therapy. It's great.
Yes.
It has changed my life. And then, just realizing my own limitations
Mm.
and realizing that and being very self-aware of, hey, you didn't rest enough this weekend. You didn't have enough me time, enough recharge your batteries. And it's really hard for me because I'm an extrovert and I don't like to sit alone. I like to congregate with my friends, with my family, but
Yeah.
sometimes I need that downtime.
Yes.
So, what it looks like for me is regular therapy sessions, having some alone time. I've been reading a lot.
Good.
Sometimes I'll read and do some research on something, but sometimes I'll just read for pleasure.
Yes.
And I love reading. I walk my dog every day. We get outside every day, even if it's raining, even if it's cold, even if it's hot. We find that time to get outside, get some fresh air, and do that sort of thing. And then I try to just connect on a deep level with someone that I trust.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned I have a therapist, but it also helps me to have a close friend or my mom or my grandmother to have a conversation and check in and just, really tell them how I'm doing and what I'm
Totally.
experiencing.
Yeah.
And so those are some things that have really helped me. It's not perfect. I'm not perfect. And I don't know that, my cynicism for the world because of the things that I've seen happen to kids will ever go away
Sure.
fully.
Yeah.
I don't expect it to. I feel like you can be really overboard, and when you have children, not allow your children to do a lot of things because of the things that we have heard and seen.
Sure.
But there's still that kids need to be able to be kids and still explore, their independence and their autonomy. Hopefully without putting them in peril or dangerous situations.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right about sort of the cynicism. It's understandable,
mhm,
when you're that close in proximity to concrete examples of some really horrible things. Um,
mhm.
and I appreciate you talking about therapy as well. Like I in the past have had therapists, and they've been really instrumental in me recovering from health issues and whatnot. And um, so I know, other people in nonprofits as well, like I've talked about, the benefit of going to weekly, biweekly therapy. So thank you for raising those topics. That's really important.
Yeah, I had someone say to me, I think it was a board member of mine. He said, who's helping the helpers?
Yes.
And I thought, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good question.
Hmm.
Yeah. So what might the future look like for you in terms of, what your next steps may be or anything?
I have been thinking a lot about that. Obviously, I've had a lot of time to think. It's now June. I've been out of an 8 to 5 since February, which I'm very blessed to have been able to take this time. A lot of people don't have the ability or can't afford to take off some time and really rest and recharge and strategically think about what my future could look like. And I still don't know. That's the funny part is that I still don't know.
Yeah.
And I still feel so young and I still feel at the core of who I am. My job or my mission in this world is to help people.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grow up. I thought I wanted to be a pharmacist, but that didn't work out. But
Mhm.
at the end of the day, I always saw myself a vision, if you will, of me just linking arms with people in my community and being that helper.
Yeah.
And I think I've done that in so many ways and in many different, I guess, capacities. And what's been freeing during this time is knowing, like, okay, even though I don't have an 8 to 5, I can still volunteer. Like,
Yes.
I used to want volunteers all the time. Now it's my turn to kind of volunteer
True.
and
Yeah.
explore some of the other great organizations in my community that are doing awesome work. So
Yeah.
that's been fun. But as far as the future, I love, and this is where we can kind of get into talking about how I'm involved with responsive fundraising,
Mhm.
is really going into these small nonprofits that I have the direct experience with of not having a system at all
Yeah.
and thinking that they understand donors, and they don't, because
Right.
they're just sending year end appeals and having an event once a year and calling it a day.
Right.
And then writing their federal grant, which next year, could it be there? We don't know.
Right. Yeah.
And so, really, just I'm helping another child advocacy center in my state right now, just kind of going in and doing an audit of, hey, what do you have going on? What do you do? What does a touch point look like for you with a donor?
Yeah.
And just having those discovery conversations and seeing the light bulb come on and being like, oh, I get it now. I understand why this process makes sense, and helping them set up these processes for success,
Yeah.
for sustainability. And
Sure.
so I think that's what my future looks like. Loosely, I also can see myself um, getting back into the nonprofit world, not as an executive director, but more of a community relations person, a development person, major gift officers, stuff like that.
Okay.
But I just don't, the responsibility of running an entire organization, and then, like, one day you're checking your email, you're checking your emails, and then you got to unclog the toilet, and then a kid's throwing up in the living room, you got to go clean that up, and then I got to do the budget, and then I got to do a grant report, and it's just a lot.
It's a
And
lot.
so
Yes.
yeah, so I think that it involves me helping people.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
love how you mentioned, the vision you had when you were younger, thinking
Mhm.
about, linking arms with people in your community. So that's really inspiring. And Laurel,
Thanks.
you were talking earlier about the people that, you've leaned on, your confidants. You mentioned your mom, your grandmother, close friends. And that's a nice segue, I think, to this next question, where you've highlighted on LinkedIn that Jason Lewis, who was a season 2 guest on this podcast with Jennifer Harris, has been a mentor to you. And I'm just curious, in that dynamic, what did what worked really well in that mentor-mentee relationship that, would be great if that would be ingrained in other mentor-mentee relationships?
Yeah, so Jason and I met. I attended one of his workshops. He's not from here. He's from Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So I attended one of his workshops in Birmingham, and
Okay.
it was right before the pandemic. I think it was 2019. And I remember just sitting there and thinking the way that he described how my job was supposed to look, and, the systems, the way the system was supposed to look, and, how people are stuck in their old ways of doing things that aren't really working anymore. And just he explained that just so well. And I remember I had a copy of his book. He gave everybody a copy of his book, The War on Fundraising Talent. And I took it home and I read it in like a couple hours. And I was like, this dude is a genius. And at that time, like I had been to the AFP conferences, I was looking at getting my CFRE, like I was doing all these things. And I met this guy and I'm like, he's my new fundraising hero. And like, that says a lot because I really like Penelope Burke too.
Oh, yeah.
But then I met Jason and I was like, okay, I can get down with this guy. And so then the pandemic happened and he happened to be traveling through Montgomery, which is where I was based at the time, to visit his parents. And he just reached out to me on LinkedIn and was like, hey, Laurel, I would love to get coffee. And I'm like, I almost dropped my phone because I was like, what? Jason Lewis just messaged me? Is this real? This is a joke, right? And so he met me for coffee, and it was probably the best 2 hours of my career. Just him just imparting wisdom on me. And I think that what I like about Jason is he's brave and that he is a contrarian, and his voice is going to impact the work that we do for generations because he's pushing back on, these old ways that we have been doing fundraising. I love to talk about direct mail with him. That's a fun conversation, direct mail. But he also told me, he was like, Laurel, you're not a fundraiser. I mean, you're a fundraiser, but your role, you're an event planner.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, what? Like, I thought I was a development director.
Right.
And so really that was a perspective shift for me, because I think that a lot of small nonprofits hire a development director, and really what they hire is a marketing coordinator, a special event manager, a social media person, instead of what higher institutions think about, larger foundations, they think about that major gift officer.
Right.
And so he helped me recognize that, yeah, I was doing fundraising, but it wasn't what I was made for, because I'm made for connection and relationships and bringing people in to a culture, an organization, and showing them the impact that their gift can make on a large scale. And so that was kind of a wake-up call for me, because I knew, like, I stayed busy, organizing golf tournaments, doing events, but the in-between work, the relationship building work, was not there. And it was because I was so busy doing marketing, planning events, social media, managing volunteers, that sort of thing. And so I still think the small nonprofit, like I said, the under 10 kind of size organization, has a long way to go to catch up to some of these larger organizations in terms of what they define a development director as, or a development officer. I don't think they're on the same wavelength at all. And so that was one of the things that I love about Jason. He keeps it real and he tells you like it is. But also I could call him anytime, and we can talk through how I'm feeling about a certain issue and we'll talk about it. But also he encourages me to research more, to look into things more and think outside the box, and not do something just because so and so that has been doing fundraising for 30 years says that it works. Like, does it really work for you in your organization
Right.
with
Yeah.
your donors?
Yeah. That's a
And so
great
that's what
perspective.
I love about Jay. I mean, I could go on about him. He's a great person, and I truly think he's a thought leader. And I look forward to, you know, any communication I have with him. I look forward to his LinkedIn posts. I'm in the comments seeing who has an issue with what he says because it's always funny. But yeah, he's a great guy.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing how you guys connected and what's worked well in that dynamic. And
Mm-hmm.
Laurel, as you were talking um, earlier about how you are a connector, that's a nice
Mm-hmm.
segue to this quote. I have a master file of all these questions, and sometimes I build out questions based on the
Mm-hmm.
research or quotes from authors and other people in life. And this one from author Brene Brown, I think can be really connected to what you've talked about with your educational background, how you are a connector. So I'll read the quote and then would love to hear how hearing stories has impacted your life. So in her book, Rising Strong, Brene Brown notes that, quote, in a culture of scarcity and perfectionism, there's a surprisingly simple reason we want to own, integrate, and share our stories of struggle. We do this because we feel the most alive when we are connecting with others and being brave with our stories. It's in our biology. End of quote. And so, how is connecting with others and being brave with your story impacted your life? And I mean, you were brave telling me a few minutes ago about resigning from your last position and the reasons why. So, what came to mind as you saw that quote in question, please?
Well, first of all, I love Brene Brown.
Uh-huh.
Love it. I love what she says about being vulnerable as a leader and how that builds trust. And so that's something that I've tried to do as I have been promoted throughout my career is really just be vulnerable in leadership to build that trust. But I think, sharing our stories, I mean, who wants to feel isolated? I think that when you share what you're going through, um, not only like does it unburdens you. Like if you're just holding it in, can you imagine the stress? And that's what I loved about what we did at the Child Advocacy Center
Hmm.
is you have these children who have had the worst things happen to them and they get to come and talk to someone for sometimes the very first time about what has happened to them.
Yeah.
And just for the staff that worked for me, they always said that the forensic interviewers that was the biggest honor was that
Well,
these kids trusted them to tell them these things. And I think there's a lightness that you feel after you share with someone. And I feel like connectivity, right? So I mentioned earlier, I think we're all humans and we all we may all be different, but at the core of who we are, we're all the same. We're built for a relationship, we're built for a community. And I think that, yeah, sharing builds that community and
yeah.
connectedness and helps you feel that sense of togetherness. And so you're not alone in the world. You're brave to face another day.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, those are good thoughts. Thank you. Um, and this next one, the last question we have here, also from a best-selling author. This one is from David Brooks. And I thought it would be a good question for you in our conversation today because it talks about ethical leadership and what that looks like. And, certainly with the work you've done, being an ethical leader is highly important. And so in an article called The Quiet Magic of Middle Managers, David Brooks wrote that, quote, we assume that we are being judged on our competence, our ability to do something. but mostly we are judged on our warmth. Ethical leaders communicate a joyfulness in what they do, and they attract followers in part by showing pleasure. So in your experience, how do you strive to convey those sentiments of sincerity and warmth while ensuring that responsibilities are accomplished and people are doing what they need to do for their own um, fulfillment?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's hard to be warm and joyful,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Especially, in the world of child abuse, because I'm going to reference that because that's where I've spent most of my time.
sure, yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's really hard, and so you've got to fill your own cup so that you can approach your day with joyfulness and warmth.
right,
To both, I would say, your constituents, to your donors, to your staff.
yeah,
I think sorry, there was a fuzz. I think there's a two-part for me, right? So to that, how do I convey, ethically to my donors, the difference that they're making, which is
yeah,
really hard, right? Especially when you deal with something that's so confidential
sure,
as abuse and minors and it going through the court system and all of that. And unfortunately, there is limited information that I can share,
right,
both for the protection of, the child, for the agency, for the alleged perpetrator, because everybody's innocent until proven guilty. And so there's a lot of lines that you have to walk there.
yeah,
And I think just sharing the stories of our kids who, they've gone through counseling and they've transformed from point A to point B,
yeah,
and then we get follow-up letters, years down the road, thank you for what you did for
oh
me.
wow,
And just showing that impact, because numbers, we all know that we like to see numbers, statistics, things like that, but they're not as impactful as a story, and sometimes it is really hard to tell a story without making our kids feel like it's a zoo, right? That we're exploiting them.
right,
And I think, and I think the culture in America and the world, like we love it, right? So I think about my timeline and what's on my timeline right now. Well, the Karen Reed trial was on recently, and so I'm all in it. And like the Diddy trial is still going on. We like that sensational story
yes, that's
where we can
true,
get all the details, and it satisfies some sort of thing within us. Like, what podcast do I listen to? Dateline. Yes, I
right,
do.
right,
Um, but when you're doing this work, it's sacred. And so you
Mhm.
can't, the sensationalism is, you have to draw that boundary.
Yeah,
And I think with my staff, having compassion and just knowing that, hey, like what we heard today and what we dealt with today was really, really tough
yeah,
and hard.
yeah,
And, you know, I think we just need to go get some ice cream.
right,
Or I think that if you guys are okay with it, let's just go home. Let's go
right,
home.
yeah,
Go take a nap. Go hug your kids.
exactly,
Whatever you need. But it did come with that balance of recognizing that what we do is really hard. There is still work to be done, and we do want to have the highest standard of excellence in the work that we do, but we also want to take care of ourselves and the kids that we serve. And
yeah,
if we're not taking care of ourselves at the end of the day, it hurts the kids. And so just remembering that at all times and putting the kids first. Kids come first.
yes, yeah. Yeah, very well said. I think it's a real delicate situation because there's
Mhm.
only so much that you are allowed to say uh, to a donor or to a prospect,
Mhm.
or
Or even a news reporter, you know.
right. Yes, yes, yeah, yeah. And I think, yeah, you also mentioned that just there's something innate in us as humans that we want we chase the sensationality of
Well, and then you
answers.
think about you're scrolling Facebook or something, or you're watching the news, and you see a mugshot come up of one of your neighbors who
Yeah,
you had no idea, was involved in something like this. It's scary, and it invokes that natural curiosity about, you know, what was it? Like, was it
right,
serious, or was it just, was it a misunderstanding? Like,
right.
it all kinds of things. And then you have the teachers who, you know, we had recently, there's a teacher of the year who won teacher of the year last year who recently got arrested
Oh boy.
for some alleged crimes. And so it is hard. It's hard.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I appreciate the candor in your conversation today, Laurel, and it's just been really nice connecting with you and hearing your story. Thank you for sharing with candor and bravery. I've enjoyed connecting with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I love meeting new friends. And anytime you want to chat again, let me know.
Yeah, absolutely, Laurel. Thank you. I wish you all the best in your next landing spot as well, and look forward to hearing what that may be.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yes, and for our audience, thank you for supporting the People in Fundraising podcast series. You'll be able to find Laurel Teel's conversation later this summer across the following platforms. So every Monday, I air conversations on LinkedIn with a link to the YouTube recording. Also on Podbean for the audio only file. And then thanks to my 100th guest, Luis Diaz of WISE and the Donor Participation Project, for his sponsorship of my website, peopleinfundraising.wordifysites.com. So that's where you can find Laurel's conversation later this summer. And thank you for supporting and listening and tuning in. And Laurel, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. You too.
Thank you.